John Mercer stood at the large window of Earth Orbital Station Delta, watching the blue planet spin below. At 45 years old, the former Space Marine had thought his days of surprise would be over. 15 years of military service had prepared him for almost anything. Almost. "Mr. Mercer, your presence is requested in Diplomatic Bay 7, said the station's AI through his personal communicator. Ambassador Krell of the Valari has arrived with an unscheduled delegation. John sighed and straightened his dark blue uniform jacket. The Valari were always trouble. Not because they were hostile. The peace treaty had held for 5 years now, but because they were proud, formal, and impossibly difficult to read. As Earth's diplomatic liaison to the alien species, John had spent more time with the purple-skinned, warriors than any human alive, and he still found them confusing. "Tell them I'm on my way," he said, already moving toward the transit tube. The station hummed with activity around him. People from all walks of life moved through the wide corridors, some in uniforms like his, others in civilian clothes. Delta. Station was humanity's gateway to the stars, the place where Earth met the galaxy dot. When John entered Diplomatic Bay 7, he found 3 Valari waiting. 2 were the typical warrior diplomats he was used to, tall, broad-shouldered males with ridged foreheads and ceremonial armor. But the third figure made him pause. She was Valari, certainly, with the same purple skin and silver-white hair that marked their species. But she was smaller, more delicate in build than any Valari he had met before. Her eyes were not the typical gold of her race, but a soft, glowing violet that seemed to shift in the light. "Liaison Mercer," Ambassador Krell said, his deep voice filling the room. "I bring greetings from the High Kingdom of Valaria." John gave the formal bow required by Valari custom. "Ambassador, we weren't expecting you for another cycle. To what do we owe this honor?" Krell gestured to the female. "This is Lyra. She is our gift to strengthen the bonds between our peoples." John blinked, certain he had misunderstood. "I'm sorry, Ambassador. Did you say gift?" "Indeed." Krell nodded solemnly. "She will serve as a cultural attache. She has been trained in your language and customs. She requires a sponsor among your people. You have been chosen." John looked at the female, at Lyra, who stood with her eyes downcast, hands folded in front of her. Something wasn't right here. The Valari valued their females highly. They were rarely seen off-world. "Ambassador, this is highly irregular. Perhaps we should discuss this privately." Krell agreed with a curt nod, and they moved to a small meeting room attached to the bay. The other male Valari remained with Lyra. Once the door closed, John dropped the diplomatic act. "What's really going on here, Krell? The Valari don't gift their people." Krell's gold eyes narrowed. "You are perceptive, Mercer. Very well. The truth, then. Lyra is considered defective among our kind. She cannot bear children." John frowned. "And that makes her defective?" "In our society, yes. A female who cannot continue the bloodline has no place. Traditionally, such females would face exile or worse." Krell's expression was unreadable. "But King Borax is progressive. He suggested this arrangement instead. So you're dumping her on us because she doesn't fit your idea of a perfect Valari?" John felt anger rising in his chest. He had seen enough prejudice in his life to recognize it, even when it came wrapped in purple skin and formal language. "We are offering her a chance at a meaningful life," Krell countered. "She is highly intelligent. She speaks your language fluently. She can serve as a bridge between our cultures. But she needs protection and aim to stand behind. Yours." John ran a hand through his short gray hair. "And if I refuse?" "Then she returns to Valaria to face traditional consequences." The implied threat was clear. John thought of the small female waiting outside, her eyes downcast. This wasn't diplomacy. It was blackmail. But the alternative was sending her back to face who knew what. Fine, he said finally. But this is a professional arrangement only. She gets her own quarters. She applies for a real position on the station. This isn't some medieval marriage. Deal. Krell smiled, showing pointed teeth. Of course. We are civilized beings, after all. When they returned to the main bay, John looked at Lyra with new eyes. She wasn't just standing there passively. He realized. She was observing, calculating. When their eyes met, he saw intelligence and something else, fear, carefully controlled. Lyra, Krell said, Liaison Mercer has agreed to be your sponsor. You will be under his protection while you adapt to life among humans. She bowed deeply to John. I am grateful, Liaison Mercer. Her voice surprised him, melodic but strong, with just a hint of an accent. It's just John, he said. If we're going to do this, let's skip the formalities. After the Valari ship departed, John took Lyra to the station's administrative center to process her residency. The station manager, Susan Allen, raised her eyebrows when John explained the situation. A gift? That's what they're calling it? Susan shook her head as she entered data into her terminal. Never thought I'd see the day when the Valari started pawning off their people. She's not a pawn, John said, more sharply than he intended. She's a refugee. Susan's expression softened. Of course. Sorry, John. She turned to Lyra with a professional smile. Let's get you set up with quarters and station credentials. Later, as John showed Lyra to her new living space, a small but comfortable room in the diplomatic section, he finally asked the question that had been bothering him. Did you agree to this arrangement, Lyra? Or was this decided for you? She looked at him for a long moment, her violet eyes searching his face. I chose this over the alternatives, she said finally. But no, I did not create these circumstances. John nodded. Fair enough. Look, I know this is strange for both of us, but I want you to know that you're free here. This sponsorship thing is just paperwork. You can build whatever life you want. What I want, Lyra said carefully, is to be useful. I have knowledge skills. On Velaria, they meant nothing because I could not fulfill my primary function. But here, what kind of skills? A small smile touched her lips. I understand physics in ways that made my teachers uncomfortable. I see patterns in subspace fields that others miss. I can build things. John felt a spark of interest. The station's research division is always looking for new perspectives. I could arrange an interview. You would do this? For the first time, he saw hope in her eyes. Like I said, you're free to build whatever life you want here. I'm just helping with the doors. That night, alone in his quarters, John sent a message to his old friend Kyle Bennett at station security. Run a deep background check on the Valari female called Lyra. Something's not right about this whole arrangement. The Valari don't give up their people, even defective ones, without a reason. As he waited for sleep to come, John thought about Lyra's unusual eyes and the intelligence behind them. Whatever game the Valarari were playing, he had a feeling that their gift was more valuable than they were letting on. And somewhere, deep in the vastness of space, a Valari royal cruiser made its way back to the homeworld, where King Vorax awaited news of the successful placement of the female who, contrary to all reports, might be the most important Valari alive. 3 years passed quickly on Earth Orbital Station Delta. Lyra adapted to life among humans with surprising ease. Her brilliant mind earned her not just a position in the research division, but a leadership role. Scientists twice her age came to her with problems they couldn't solve, and she often found solutions that no one else had considered. John watched her growth with a mixture of pride and caution. Their relationship had evolved from reluctant sponsor and refugee to something that felt like friendship. They shared meals twice a week, a tradition that had started as a way to help her adjust to station life, but had become something both looked forward to. "You've never told me about your family," John said one evening as they sat in his quarters. The station rotated beneath them, creating the illusion of Earth rising and setting through the viewport. Lyra looked down at her plate. "There isn't much to tell. I was raised in a royal education center. My parents gave me to the state when my defect was discovered." John had learned not to push when she grew quiet like this. "Well, their loss is our gain. Your new drive system. Design has half the engineers on the station, walking around with their jaws on the floor." Her violet eyes brightened. The latest tests were promising. "If we can stabilize the subspace field correctly, we could reduce travel time between star systems by 60%. Just promise me I'll get a ride on the first ship with your fancy new engine." Lyra smiled. It was a smile John had come to treasure, rare but genuine. "You will be the first passenger after me." Later that night, John received a message from Kyle Bennett. 3 years had passed, but his friend in security hadn't forgotten about the background check. Found something interesting. The message. Read. Encrypted Valari communications mentioning Lyra. They're tracking her research progress. Very interested in her subspace fieldwork. Watch your backs. John frowned at the screen. He'd known the Valari must have had ulterior motives, but he'd hoped it was something simple political embarrassment over Lyra's condition, perhaps. This sounded more calculating. The next day, while Lyra was deep in her work, John visited the research lab. He'd rarely gone there, respecting her independence. The lab technicians greeted him with surprise. "She's in testing bay 3, said a young engineer named Alan. But she asked not to be disturbed. "She's running a critical experiment on cellular reaction to subspace exposure." John raised an eyebrow. "Cellular reaction? I thought she was working on propulsion systems." Alan looked uncomfortable. "That's her main project, but she has this side research. It's single quotes S. personal, I think. She doesn't talk about it much." John thanked him and left without seeing Lyra. That evening, when she came to his quarters for their regular meal, he noticed. She looked different. There was a new energy about her, a barely contained excitement. "Something good happen in the lab today?" he asked casually. Lyra paused, fork halfway to her mouth. For a moment, he thought she would deflect the question. Then she put the fork down. "I made a discovery," she said. "Not about the drive system. About me. About you." She took a deep breath. "When the Valari said I could not bear children, they weren't lying, at least not from their understanding. But they were wrong." Her violet eyes held his. "My reproductive system isn't defunct. It's different. Evolved." John tried to process what she was saying. Different how? "The Valari reproduce like most humanoid species. But my biology shows signs of adaptation changes that would allow reproduction in environments that would be hostile to traditional Valari physiology." "And you discovered this through your subspace experiments?" She nodded. "I was testing how various cellular structures react to subspace fields. When I tested my own cells, I found something unexpected. They don't just survive subspace exposure, they thrive in it." She leaned forward. "John, I think I represent the next stage of Valari. Evolution. A mutation that would allow our species to survive in deep space, even in subspace corridors." John felt a chill. If what she was saying was true, it would explain the Valari interest in her research. "Have you shared this with anyone else? Just you?" "I need to run more tests to be certain." Before John could respond, his communicator chimed. It was an urgent message from the station commander. "Mercer, report to command immediately. We have a situation." In the command center, screens showed a large Valari diplomatic vessel approaching the station. It wasn't scheduled. It had simply appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system and made straight for the orbital station. "They're requesting permission." "To dock," said Commander Olivia Ward. "And they're specifically asking for you and Lyra to meet their delegation." John exchanged a look with Lyra. Her face had gone pale, making the purple of her skin look almost gray. "Did they say why?" John asked. "Only that it concerns matters of mutual scientific interest and Royal Valari prerogative, Commander." Ward looked troubled. "I don't like surprise visits, especially from the Valari. But refusing could create a diplomatic incident. We'll meet them," John decided. "But I want a security team standing by, and I want their delegation limited to 3 representatives." As they prepared to receive the Valari, John pulled Lyra aside. "You don't have to do this. We can find a reason to keep you away." She shook her head. "No, I've been expecting this in a way. They were never going to simply let me go." She touched his arm, a rare physical contact that surprised him. "But I am not the same person they sent away 3 years ago. I have learned much about my work, about myself, and about having allies I can trust." The diplomatic bay doors opened, revealing 3 Valari in formal attire. 2 were the typical warrior diplomats, but the third was different, older, with elaborate markings on his ridged forehead and ceremonial armor that gleamed with embedded jewels. "The Royal Scientific Advisor," Lyra whispered to John. "He speaks directly for the king." The advisor stepped forward, gold eyes fixed on Lyra. "It has been too long, Lyra of House Travax. The king requires your presence at a summit on the homeworld. Your expertise in subspace field manipulation has not gone unnoticed." John moved slightly, positioning himself between Lyra and the Valari. "Lyra is a resident of Earth Orbital Station Delta now. She doesn't answer to Valari royalty." The advisor's smile didn't reach his eyes. "This is not a request that can be refused. The matter concerns the security of both our peoples." He turned to Lyra. "Surely you wish to serve the greater good? Or have you forgotten your origin so quickly?" Lyra stepped forward, standing shoulder to shoulder with John. "I will attend your summit, but only if Liaison Mercer accompanies me as Earth's representative." The advisor's expression tightened, but he nodded. "Acceptable. We depart in 6 hours. Pack for an extended stay." After the Valari left, John turned to Lyra. "Are you sure about this? Once we're on their homeworld, we'll be playing by their rules." Lyra's violet eyes were determined. "I need to know why they're really interested in my research." And double quotes, she hesitated. "I need to know the truth about myself. Why I'm different. What it means." John nodded slowly. "Then we go together. But first, I need to make some preparations." "Of my own." He wouldn't tell her about Kyle's message yet. No need to add to her worries. But he would make sure they had backup plans and emergency protocols in place. As Lyra left to prepare for the journey, John couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. But sometimes the only way to disarm a trap was to spring it deliberately. And deep in his heart, he knew he wouldn't let Lyra face whatever was coming alone. The Valari royal ship moved through space with silent power. John stood at a viewport, watching stars streak by. He had never been to the Valari homeworld before. Few humans had. The purple-skinned aliens kept their home planet private, preferring to meet other species on neutral ground or space stations. Lyra joined him at the window. "We will arrive in 6 hours," she said. Her voice was calm, but John could see tension in how she held herself. "Are you ready for this?" he asked. "No," she admitted, "but I need answers. Why did they really send me away? Why do they want me? Back now? What does my research have to do with all this?" John wanted to reassure her, but he didn't want to lie. "Whatever happens, we face it together." She gave him a small smile. "You have been a better friend than I deserved, John Mercer." "That's not how friendship works, Lyra. It's not about deserving. Their moment was interrupted when the Royal Scientific Advisor entered the observation deck. "We will be hosting a formal welcome dinner tonight," he announced. "The king himself may attend." John raised an eyebrow. "The king? For a scientific summit?" The advisor's face remained neutral. "Your presence is unexpected, Liaison Mercer. The king is curious about the human who has been hosting our ... gift." The way he said gift made John's skin crawl. There was something predatory in the old Valari's eyes. "I look forward to meeting him," John said, matching the advisor's neutral tone. When the advisor left, Lyra turned to John. "Be careful, King. Vorax is not known for his patience or kindness. He is brilliant but dangerous. I've dealt with dangerous men before." Lyra shook her head. "Not like this. Valari royalty are raised to see other beings as tools or obstacles. Nothing more." The planet Valaria was beautiful from orbit-swirling patterns of deep blue oceans and purple-tinged continents. As their shuttle descended toward the royal city, John saw vast structures that dwarfed anything on Earth. Spires reached toward the sky, connected by graceful bridges that spanned impossible distances. They were escorted to guest quarters in the royal palace. The rooms were luxurious, but clearly designed for surveillance. John found 3 different types of monitoring devices in the first 10 minutes. "They're watching us," he whispered to Lyra. She nodded. "Of course. We should assume everything we say or do is being recorded." The formal dinner that evening was held in a massive hall with ceilings so high they disappeared into shadow. Hundreds of Valari nobles sat at long tables, all facing a raised platform where John and Lyra were seated with the highest-ranking officials. The food was strange but delicious. The conversation was polite but probing. The Royal Scientific Advisor asked numerous questions about Earth's scientific progress, focusing particularly on subspace research. Just as dessert was being served, a hush fell over the room. Everyone stood. King Vorax entered, and John finally understood what true Valari royalty looked like. The king was taller than other Valari, with deeper purple skin that almost glowed. His ridged forehead bore elaborate markings that seemed to shift in the light. His gold eyes were sharp and intelligent. "Remain seated," the king commanded as he took his place at the head of the table. His voice was surprisingly soft but carried power. "I wish to speak with our guests informally." The dinner resumed, but the atmosphere had changed. Everyone was listening now, hanging on every word. "Lyra of House Travax," the king said, his gold eyes fixed on her. "Your work on subspace field manipulation has caught our attention." Lyra bowed her head respectfully. "I am honored, Your Majesty. Tell me, why did you not share your discoveries with your own people first? Why give such advances to humans?" John saw the trap being laid. Before Lyra could answer, he spoke. "If I may, Your Majesty, Lyra's position on Earth Orbital Station Delta is part of our cultural exchange program. Her work benefits both our species under the terms of our alliance." The king's gaze shifted to John, cold and calculating. "The human speaks for you now, Lyra? Have you forgotten your place so completely?" Lyra sat straighter. "I speak for myself, Your Majesty. I share my discoveries with those who value them and me for more than reproductive capacity." A murmur ran through the hall. The king's expression didn't change, but John sensed danger building. "Perhaps we should continue this discussion in private," the king suggested, though it was clearly a command. Guards led them to a smaller chamber. Only the king, the Royal Scientific Advisor, John, and Lyra were allowed inside. Once the doors closed, the pretense of diplomacy fell away. "You know why you are really here," the king said to Lyra. "Your research has implications beyond faster travel between stars." Lyra met his gaze without flinching. "You want weapons. Ways to use subspace fields as tools of war. The king smiled. Not just weapons. Control, the ability to disrupt subspace corridors, would give us power over all interstellar travel. Any species wishing to move between star systems would need our permission. John stepped forward. That would violate at least 6 interstellar treaties. Treaties are for the weak, the king dismissed. The galaxy is changing. New species are emerging. From their homeworlds every cycle. The Valari must secure our position now. And what does this have to do with Lyra specifically? John asked. There are other scientists working on subspace technology. The king studied Lyra for a long moment. Tell him who you really are, Lyra of House Travax. Or should I say Lyra, daughter of Xener, my greatest rival for the throne. Lyra's face showed genuine shock. What? My parents gave me up when I was found to be infertile. I have no royal blood. The king laughed, a sound without warmth. Is that what you believe? Your mother was my cousin, married to Xener, who led the progressive faction that opposed my rule. When she became pregnant, there were those who feared the child might one day unite the opposition. So arrangements were made. Medical records were altered. You were declared defective and removed from the royal line. John watched Lyra's face as she processed this information. Her world was being rewritten before his eyes. But why send me to humans? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. To hide you in plain sight, the king said. And when you began showing unusual scientific aptitude, to see what you might develop without Valari restrictions. You were an experiment, Lyra, one that has proven quite successful. John felt rage building inside him. So you used her. Threw her away and then spied on. Her. The king's gold eyes flashed. Spare me your human sentimentality. This is how great civilizations advance. Now, he turned back to Lyra, you will provide us with your complete research on subspace field manipulation. In return, I will restore your position in Valari society. Lyra stood still, her violet eyes bright with unshed tears. Then she straightened her shoulders. And if I refuse? The king's smile disappeared. Then your human friend will not leave Valaria alive. And neither will the human scientists we have already captured from your remote research outposts. John felt his blood run cold. What scientists? Did you think we would come to this meeting without leverage? The Royal Scientific Advisor spoke for the first time since entering the chamber. We have been preparing for this moment for years. Lyra. And John exchanged a glance. The trap had been sprung, and it was more dangerous than either of them had imagined. That night, locked in their guest quarters, John and Lyra spoke in whispers. They sat in the bathroom with the shower running to mask their voices from listening devices. We need to get out of here, John said. Find those human scientists and escape. Lyra looked tired. The revelation about her true identity had shaken her deeply. The palace is heavily guarded. And even if we could escape, how would we find the scientists? They could be anywhere on the planet. John ran a hand through his hair. I managed to send a coded message to Earth before dinner. I told them we were being held against our will. But it will take days for help to arrive, if it comes at all. Lyra was quiet for a moment. There might be another way. Not all Valari support. King Vorax. There has always been a resistance movement, those who oppose his military expansion and want peaceful relations with other species. Do you think they would help us? If what the king said is true, and I am the daughter of his rival Xener, they might. Lyra looked uncertain. But how do we contact them? A soft sound from the bedroom interrupted them. They froze, listening. It came again, a light tapping at the window. They moved cautiously back. Into the bedroom. The large window overlooked a sheer drop of several hundred feet. Hovering outside was a small craft, barely visible in the darkness. A figure gestured urgently for them to open the window. "It could be a trap," John whispered. "Or it could be our only chance," Lyra replied. John checked his pocket for the small knife he had managed to hide from the Valari guards. Then he nodded to Lyra, who pressed her hand to the window control. The window slid open silently. The figure from the craft leaped inside with surprising grace. It was a female Valari, older than Lyra, with the same unusual violet eyes. "Quickly," the stranger said. "We don't have much time before the guards check this room again." John stood protectively in front of Lyra. "Who are you?" The female's violet eyes fixed on Lyra. "Someone who has waited a very long time to see her daughter." Again, Lyra gasped. "You ... You're my mother?" "Yes, my name is Nara. I was told you died at birth." Tears formed in the older female's eyes. "When rumors reached us that the king had sent a female with violet eyes to live among humans, I dared to hope." John looked between them, seeing the resemblance now, the same delicate features, the same determined set of the jaw. "We can have a proper reunion later," Nara said urgently. "Right now, we need to get you both to safety." "There are human scientists being held prisoner," John said. "We can't leave without them." Nara nodded. "We know. We've been monitoring the king's activities. We have a plan to free them, but we need to move now." The hovering craft had an open cockpit designed for two. Somehow, the three of them squeezed in, with Lyra practically sitting on John's lap. As they pulled away from the palace, John saw other craft in the distant palace security beginning to mobilize. "They've discovered you're missing," Nara said. She pressed the craft to greater speed, diving between towering buildings and through narrow passages. "Where are we going?" Lyra asked, her voice a mix of fear and excitement. "To the old city." King's sensors don't work well there because of mineral deposits in the stone." Nara glanced back at her daughter. "Your father is waiting for us there." "My father is alive too?" Lyra's voice broke with emotion. "Yes. Zener has led the resistance movement for 20 years. Many believed he was dead, which is how he wanted it. It gave him freedom to work against the king." They landed in what looked like an abandoned warehouse district. Nara led them through a maze of narrow streets, and finally to a hidden door built into what appeared to be a solid wall. Inside was a surprising sight, a fully equipped command center with dozens of Valari, working at various stations. Maps and displays covered the walls, showing palace layouts and military positions. A tall male Valari with silver-streaked hair turned as they entered. His eyes violet, like Lyra's, widened in shock. "It's really her," he whispered. Nara nodded. "Zener, this is your daughter, Lyra." Lyra stood frozen, staring at the father she had never known. Then, with a small cry, she rushed forward into his arms. John watched the reunion with a lump in his throat. After a moment, Zener pulled back to look at his daughter. "You have your mother's spirit," he said. "And I'm told, a brilliant mind for science." "The king wants my research on subspace fields," Lyra said. "He plans to use it as a weapon." Zener nodded grimly. "Thorax has always sought power above all else. That is why we must stop him." "What about the human scientists?" John asked. A female Valari approached with a datapad. "They are being held in the research complex north of the palace. We have operatives inside. They are safe for now, but the king plans to move them tomorrow." Zener turned to John. "We will free your people, Liaison Mercer, but we need Lyra's help to do it. Her understanding of subspace fields might be the key to our success." "What do you mean?" Lyra asked. Zener led them to a large display showing a complex machine. "This is the king's new planetary defense system. It creates a subspace barrier around Valaria that prevents unauthorized ships from approaching or leaving. Once fully activated, No one will be able to enter or exit the system without his permission. John frowned. That would effectively cut Valaria off from the rest of the galaxy. Exactly, Nara said. And with your research, Lyra, he could extend this technology to control subspace corridors throughout this sector of the galaxy. That's why he needs me, Lyra said, understanding dawning on her face. His scientists couldn't solve the stability problems with large-scale subspace fields. But I'm guessing you did, Zener said, a note of pride in his voice. Lyra nodded slowly. Yes, my work on the propulsion system required solving those exact problems. She studied the display. I can see what they're trying to do here, and I think I know how to disable it temporarily. How long would you need? Zener asked. A few hours to design a disruptor, but someone would need to get close to the main control node to plant it. John stepped forward. I'll do it. Lyra turned to him, concern in her violet eyes. John, this isn't your fight. Those are my people being held prisoner, he replied firmly. And besides, I'm not letting you have all the fun. A ghost of a smile touched Lyra's lips. It would take both of us. I need to calibrate the disruptor to the exact frequency of the barrier. Zener looked between them, then nodded. Very well. We'll create a diversion to draw away the guards. You'll have a small window of opportunity to reach the control node and plant the disruptor. As the resistance fighters began preparing for the mission, John pulled Lyra aside. Are you okay? This is a lot to process all at once. Lyra looked toward her parents, who were deep in conversation with their lieutenants. I spent my whole life believing I was worthless to my people. Now I find out I'm part of a royal family that my parents never wanted to give me up. She shook her head. It doesn't feel real. John put a hand on her shoulder. Whatever happens, you're not alone anymore. You have a family now both here and on Earth. Lyra looked up at him, her violet eyes searching his face. Yes, she said softly. I believe I do. Across the room, Zener called for their attention. We move at dawn, he announced. Tonight, rest and prepare. Tomorrow, we take back our world. As the resistance fighters dispersed to their tasks, John couldn't help but wonder if they would live to see another night. The odds were against them. A small resistance movement against the might of the Valari royal forces. But looking at Lyra, reunited with the family she never knew she had, he felt something he hadn't expected. Hope. Dawn broke over the royal city with a purple-tinged light. John checked his equipment one last time. The resistance had provided him with Valari armor that mostly fit, though it was tight across the shoulders. The helmet would hide his human features at a distance. Lyra worked nearby, making final adjustments to a small device that looked like a silver disk. The subspace disruptor was her creation, built through the night with parts smuggled in by resistance members. Are you sure this will work? John asked quietly. Lyra looked up from her work. The theory is sound. When activated, it should create a counterfield that will destabilize the barrier for about 10 minutes. Enough time for a ship to escape, and enough time for the king to know exactly what we've done. Zener approached them, dressed in battle armor. Our scouts report the human scientists are being prepared for transport. They will move them from the research complex to the palace within the hour. Then we need to move now, John said, standing not Nara. Join them, handing Lyra a small weapon. Take this. I hope you won't need it, but ... double quotes. Lyra accepted the weapon with a nod. She had changed overnight, John thought. There was new confidence in the way she held herself. Finding her family, learning. Her true identity, it had transformed her. The plan is simple, Zener explained to the assembled resistance fighters. Team 1 will create a diversion at the east gate of the research complex. Team 2 will free the human prisoners. Meanwhile, John and Lyra will infiltrate the barrier. control center, and plant the disruptor. Once the barrier is down, our ships will evacuate everyone to the safe point beyond the moon. A young male Valari raised his hand. And if the disruptor fails? Xenor's expression was grim. Then we fight our way out as best we can. They moved through the city in small groups, using service tunnels and maintenance passageways to avoid detection. John and Lyra, in their stolen armor, walked openly along less-traveled streets, looking like ordinary guards on patrol. The barrier control center was housed in a squat, heavily guarded building near the palace. As they approached, explosions sounded from the direction of the research complex. The diversion had begun. Several guards are leaving their posts, Lyra whispered, watching through special lenses built into her helmet. The diversion is working. They waited until a supply vehicle approached the control center, then fell in behind it as if escorting the delivery. The remaining guards waved them through without question, their attention focused on the distant. Explosions dot inside, they moved quickly. Lyra had studied the building's layout from resistance intelligence. The main control node should be on the lower level, she said, leading the way to a service lift. The lift opened into a humming chamber filled with equipment. Blue energy pulsed through transparent tubes that ran from floor to ceiling. At the center stood a pedestal with a glowing orb, the control node. That's it, Lyra said, moving toward the pedestal. A voice stopped them cold. I was wondering when you would arrive. King Varax stepped from behind a bank of equipment, flanked by the Royal Scientific Advisor and 4 guards. The king looked calm, almost amused. Did you really think I wouldn't anticipate this? He asked. That I wouldn't have informants in your father's little rebellion? John reached for his weapon, but the guards were faster, training their weapons on him and Lyra. The disruptor, please, the king said, holding out his hand. Lyra clutched the silver disc tightly. You'll use it to hurt people, to control them. I will use it to ensure Valari dominance, the king corrected. Our species deserves to rule the stars, not share them with lesser beings. Humans are not lesser beings, John said, removing his helmet, and neither are the Valari who oppose your rule. The king's gold eyes narrowed. Brave words from a man about to die. No one needs to die today, Lyra said, stepping forward. You want my research, my knowledge. I'll give it to you freely in exchange for the safety of the human scientists and John. John started to protest, but Lyra silenced him with a look. The king considered her offer. You would sacrifice yourself for these humans? I would sacrifice. For those I care about, Lyra replied. Isn't that what makes us more than animals? The ability to put others before ourselves? Something flickered in the king's eyes, doubt, perhaps. But before he could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. The research complex has been breached, reported one of the guards, listening to his communicator. The human prisoners are being freed. The king's face darkened with rage. Kill them both, he ordered, turning to leave. I'll deal with the prisoners myself. As the guards raised their weapons, the lights in the chamber suddenly went out. Emergency lighting kicked in seconds later, bathing everything in red. In that moment of confusion, John tackled the nearest guard while Lyra dove behind equipment. Weapons fire lit up the dim chamber. John wrestled the guard's weapon away and fired back, providing cover as Lyra crawled toward the control node. The Royal Scientific Advisor spotted her. She's going for the node, he shouted. Taking aim, John fired, hitting the advisor in the shoulder. The old Valari fell with a cry of pain. But more guards were pouring into the chamber from the upper level. Lyra, hurry! John called, taking cover behind a console. Lyra reached the pedestal and slapped the disruptor onto the control node. She quickly entered a sequence, and the disk began to glow, pulsing in time with the orb. It's done, she shouted. We have 10 minutes, The chamber shuddered as the disruptor activated. The blue energy in the tubes flickered and turned angry red. On screens around the room, warning messages flashed. "System destabilizing," announced an automated voice. "Barrier integrity failing." John fought his way to Lyra's side, and together they retreated toward a service door. The guards were distracted, trying to stabilize the failing systems. They emerged into chaos. Throughout the city, resistance fighters had come out of hiding, engaging royal forces in skirmishes. In the sky, ships darted between buildings, some fleeing, others in pursuit. A small craft landed near them, piloted by Nara. Quickly, she called Dot as they ran for the ship. John saw a group of humans being hustled aboard another resistance vessel, the scientists freed from captivity. Were almost to safety when a royal guard ship appeared overhead, weapons trained on them. John pushed Lyra forward. "Go, I'll hold them off." But before either of them could act, another ship slammed into the guard vessel, sending it spinning away. Through the smoke, John saw Zener piloting the attacking craft. He waved once, then disappeared back into the aerial battle. Aboard Nara's ship, they rocketed toward the upper atmosphere. On the displays, they could see the planetary barrier flickering and dissolving as the disruptor did its work. "We have 6 minutes left," Lyra said, watching the countdown. "Will everyone make it out in time?" Nara nodded. "The evacuation is proceeding. Your father will join us at the rendezvous point." They broke through the atmosphere into open space. Already, resistance ships were gathering at the designated coordinates, preparing to jump to safety once the last vessels arrived. "Look," John sighed, pointing to a large display. On the screen, a message was being broadcast to all Valari ships. It showed King Vorax, his face twisted with rage, demanding the return of all traitors and thieves. But behind his words was something John hadn't expected to see: fear. "He's losing control," Lyra said softly. "Not just of the barrier, but of his people." The last ships made it through the failing barrier, just as the disruptor's effects faded. Among them was Zener's craft, damaged but intact. Days later, aboard an Earth Alliance vessel responding to John's distress call, he found Lyra on the observation deck, watching the stars. "What will you do now?" he asked, joining her at the viewport. "My parents want me to join them," she said. "They're gathering allies, planning to return and challenge King Vorax openly." "And what do you want?" Lyra turned to him, her violet eyes searching his face. "I want to finish my work. Not for weapons or control, but to bring worlds closer together." She hesitated. "I want to go home." "To Valaria?" John asked, his heart sinking. Lyra shook her head and took his hand. "To Earth Orbital Station Delta. That's where I found myself. That's where I found you." John smiled, squeezing her hand gently. "I think that can be arranged." As the ship prepared to jump to Earth, they stood together, watching the stars blur around them. They had both been changed by this journey, Lyra discovering her true heritage, John finding something he hadn't known he was looking for. She had been sent to him as a gift, unwanted, and supposedly flawed. Now, as they returned to the life they had built together, Jean realized that the real gift had been the chance to know her, to stand beside her, and to help her find her way home. And perhaps, in doing so, he had found his way home too.